Most important trait of a founder is the ability to prioritize, right? They get an email, that's what they do. Somebody taps them on the shoulder or they respond. Somebody says, come to this meeting, they go, without understanding how to prioritize. And I promise you, if you do these 4 strategies, you will get control.
Nir, thank you so much for being here. Your work has helped so many entrepreneurs worldwide overcome distractions, be more productive, save time, and avoid burnout, allowing us to stay on track with our mission and our vision. I'm truly honored to have you here.
The pleasure's all mine. I really appreciate you having me.
Thank you. So today we're going to uncover why 90% of business owners who try to improve their productivity fail and what they can do differently to actually make it work. And hopefully I can challenge you with some questions you don't typically get in interviews, hopefully.
I love it. I would expect nothing less from you. I love it.
But first, let's establish why becoming indistractable is a game changer for business owners. So Neil, what does it truly mean to be indistractable?
Sure. So I made up the term indistractable so I can define it any way I want. That's the perk of making up your own words. So being indistractable means you strive to be as honest with others as you are with yourself. That we all know that being called a liar is one of the worst things someone can call you, right? We never would want someone to question our integrity, our honesty. And yet, if you're anything like I used to be, I would lie to myself all the time. I would say, oh, today's going to be the day that I exercise and eat right. But I didn't, and I wouldn't. Today's going to be the day that I work on that big project, and nothing's going to get in my way. I'm going to finish those sales calls. I'm going to finish that big project I've been working on. But somehow 20, 30, 45 minutes later, I'm checking email, I'm checking Slack channels, I'm looking at the news, I'm doing everything but the thing I said I was going to do. So being indistractable means you strive to do what you say you're going to do. So it's the kind of person who lives with personal integrity. So if you say you're going to do it, you do it. And that is such a critical skill for this day and age because there is no area of your life, whether it's your physical health, whether it's your emotional well-being, whether it's your relationship with your family, and certainly when it comes to your business success, requires you to do what you say you want to do. So people like doing business with people who have high integrity, right? They do what they say they're going to do. They hit their goals. They meet their targets. They don't just talk, they perform. And those are the kind of people who depend upon being indistractable. That's what being indistractable is all about.
So what, in your experience, is the real cost of not becoming indistractable as a business owner?
Oh, I mean, I see this all the time. So I've been an active angel investor now for going on 20 years, believe it or not. And I have seen all kinds of entrepreneurs come and go. And I will tell you, the number one reason that I will pass on an angel investment, and I've done over 36 deals. I've had, 6 unicorns now. And I will tell you, the reason I'd pass on an investment when it comes to looking at the founding team, I always look for the most important trait. And the most important trait of a founder, or any CEO for that matter, any executive, any manager for that matter, is the ability to prioritize. That is number one. That is the alpha. That is the omega. That is everything.
Later in this interview, Nir is going to reveal one surprising mistake that kills productivity, and I guarantee most people don't even realize they're making it. Stick around to find what it is and how to avoid it.
Your job as a manager, as a founder, as someone who leads others, your job is to prioritize. And what I see with a lot of founders out there, with a lot of business owners and executives, is that they have very poor prioritization skills, right? They get an email, that's what they do. Somebody taps them on the shoulder, they respond. Somebody says, come to this meeting, they go, without understanding how to prioritize. And prioritization is all about understanding what you want to do. That's traction. Anything you say you're going to do in advance, that's traction. And everything else is distraction. And many times those distractions, they trick us. We think that, email, that's part of my job. That's what I said I was going to do, right? I have to do email. It's part of what I get paid for. But if it's not what you said you're going to do in advance on your schedule, it's just as much of a distraction, if not more so, because people get fooled into thinking they're being productive by checking email and Slack channels all day long, and they don't realize that that's pulling them away from the hard and important work they have to do to move their lives and careers forward. So just because it's a work-related task doesn't mean it's not a distraction. That is the worst kind of distraction because it has fooled you into thinking you're productive when you're really not doing what you said you're going to do.
Later in this interview, Nir is going to reveal one surprising mistake that kills productivity, and I guarantee most people don't even realize they're making it. Stick around.
Yeah, I think big picture, why do I do the work I do? What's the goal of all this? And for me, I don't write books because I know things. I write books because I want to know things. So when I spend 5 years on a book, I get a great education in that topic. So I only write books for problems that I myself have. And let me tell you, I was the most distractible person on earth. Part of the reason it took me 5 years to write this book is because I kept getting distracted. And so I wanted to learn those skills for myself.
Was that the reason that you decided to write the book?
Absolutely, because I read everybody else's book on the topic. That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Right.
And I read other books on the topic, and frankly, they weren't very helpful. They told me things like, well, just stop using your cell phone, stop checking email. Well, that's the kind of advice only a tenured professor could give you because they can't get fired. But if you don't check email, if you don't respond, you're going to get fired. That's not useful advice. Or there's a whole nother line of folks who think that technology is the problem. It's all technology's fault. Well, it's ubiquitous. How do we stop using this technology? It's not a very practical solution. So that is why I wrote this book, was really for myself more than anyone else.
Hmm. Okay, so Nir, you argue that 90% of distractions are internal. How did you come to this conclusion?
Yeah, so I looked at the research. I read other books on the topic, and they had all kinds of tips and tricks and hacks. And I found that very few of them were actually supported by good research. And when I looked at the actual research itself, one study I came across was this time study that found that 90% of our distractions, 90%, 90, they don't start from what we call the external triggers. The 10% is the external triggers, the pings, the dings, the rings, all these things in our outside environment. That accounts for only 10% of our distractions. But that's what people tend to blame for their distractions. My phone distracted me, my kids distracted me, my boss distracted, all this stuff outside of me. Studies have found that it's actually 90% of the time that you get distracted. It's not because of the external triggers. It's because of what's called the internal triggers. What are internal triggers? Internal triggers are uncomfortable emotional states that we seek to escape. Boredom, loneliness, fatigue, uncertainty, anxiety. That is 90% of the cause of our distractions. So the big conclusion that I made, that I think, very few books are advocating for, at least when I wrote Indistractable, was that blaming our technology is not the root cause of the problem. And how do I know that? Because Plato, the Greek philosopher, was complaining about this very same problem. He called it in the Greek akrasia, the tendency to do things against our better interest. And if Plato was complaining about this 2,500 years ago, the source of the problem can't be email and social media and Slack channels. It can't be, because Plato didn't have those things. He didn't have the internet. So this is part of the human condition. We have always been distractible. And the way we become indistractable is starting from within, is understanding how do we master those internal triggers so they don't become our masters. So by understanding that 90% of your distractions begin from within, that becomes step number one. So in the Indistractable model, there's 4 steps that took me years and years of research to compile together, these 4 fundamental strategies for how to become indistractable. Now, I will tell you, people want the life hacks, they want the tips, they want the tricks, they want the tactics, which are good, they're important. But what's much more important is the strategy. Because remember, tactics are what you do, strategy is why you do it. So if I can get this picture into people's heads, let's just start with that real quick, because this is the most important part, is understanding the Indistractable model. So it starts with, what is distraction? Okay. Distraction is any action that pulls you away from what you said you were going to do. And the opposite of distraction is not focus. That is just a means of avoiding distraction. Focus is just one tool. The opposite of distraction is traction. They're opposites, traction and distraction. Traction is any action that pulls you towards what you said you were going to do, okay? So now that we have traction, we have distraction, now we can think about what we talked about earlier, the triggers. We have the external triggers and the internal triggers. So I want everyone to paint this picture in their minds of 2 arrows pointing to the left and to the right, traction and distraction, and then we have 2 arrows pointing to the center, representing external triggers and internal triggers. Now we just work our way around these 4 points of the compass. So step number 1, master the internal triggers. That is by far the most important step, and we'll get into exactly what you can do to master those internal triggers. Step number 2 is make time for traction. Because what I learned is you cannot say you got distracted unless you know what you got distracted from. Okay, you can't say you got distracted unless you know what you got distracted from. So if you have a big open white space calendar, what the hell are you complaining about? What did you get distracted from? So we'll talk about how do you make time for traction to turn your values into time. We can talk about that as well. The third step is where most people start. They start with the external triggers. Oh, I'm going to grayscale my phone. I'm going to put my phone away. I'm going to cancel my email. I'm going to stop social media. They try all these tricks. And frankly, they don't last very long, because if you don't start with number one, master internal triggers, number two, make time for traction, and then hack back external triggers. This is where we make our phones indistractable. We make our computer indistractable. That's kindergarten stuff. I spent about a page in my book about that, because that's very easy to do. I can show anyone in about 20 minutes how to make your phone no longer a problem. If you think that's the source of the problem, it ain't. What about the other external triggers? Meetings we didn't need to attend, emails we didn't need to receive or send. That's the trickier stuff that takes a little bit more explanation on how to put those in their place. And then finally, the fourth step is preventing distraction with pacts. So a pact is what's called a commitment device. It's the last line of defense to prevent us from getting distracted. So now that we've set the stage around these four big strategies, now we can dive into each and every one. So you asked about mastering internal triggers. So what's the big takeaway here? The big takeaway is that if you don't understand the source of the distraction, if you don't understand the underlying emotion that you are trying to escape, you will always be distracted by one thing or another. Whether it's too much news, too much booze, too much football, too much Facebook, you're always going to find distraction, because the problem is within, right? It's your discomfort with sitting with a sensation. If you can't sit with your family without looking at your phone every 30 seconds, it's not the phone, it's you. If you can't focus on your job without looking at email or sports scores or stock prices, that's not the email's fault. That's not the sports score's fault. It's something about dealing with discomfort. So it's something to be ashamed of. It's something that we have to just come clean about. I had to come clean about this with my own life. Again, I wrote this book for me more than anyone else. It wasn't until I realized, wait a minute, this is a skill. It's a skill just like any other. But nobody teaches, at least I was never taught, how do you deal with uncomfortable emotions? I never took that class in school. And so I had to learn these tactics, and I studied cognitive behavioral therapy and acceptance and commitment therapy and all kinds of different therapies out there that have this, amazing wisdom that we can use to leverage these uncomfortable sensations the way high performers do. What we find when we study high performers in every field, whether it's athletics, whether it's business, whether it's the arts, when you look at people who are at the top of their game, they too have the same exact internal triggers. They also feel bored and insecure and lonely and indecisive, the same exact internal triggers. But these rock stars in their field, they have learned how to deal with that discomfort in a way that propels them like rocket fuel towards traction, as opposed to what most of us do, which is, oh, I don't feel good. Let me click it away. Let me drink it away. Let me scroll it away. These people, the high performers, know how to leverage that discomfort to propel them forward.
Can I suggest something about what fuels internal triggers for entrepreneur and business owners, including myself? So many entrepreneurs fear making the wrong decisions, especially when supporting a team and the family.
Yeah,
So I was wondering, could this anxiety, actually be fueling the internal triggers that cause the distractions? And if so, how do you shift from a loss aversion mindset, reduce the fear, and start focusing on potential gains?
totally. So fear is the big boogeyman. When you look at so many of our problems in the world, are caused by this problem of fear, and more so even than fear, because fear is actually a useful psychological reaction, right? Like we know why we have fear. It's so that if we see a tiger chasing after us on the plains of the Serengeti when we evolved 200,000 years ago, we react, right? We don't think, we just act, we run. What's more deadly is actually anxiety. So fear is about present danger. Anxiety is about worrying about uncontrollable future dangers. And that's where we tend to get into a lot of trouble. Because when we let anxiety get the best of us, what we tend to do is when we feel out of control, when we feel like we can't do anything about that anxiety, that feeling, we look for distraction, right? When we feel that tension of like, oh, I don't know what's going to happen. There might be some kind of thing in the future that I'm fearful of that's going to cause me pain in the future. I try and escape that discomfort. If I haven't learned the right tactics, I try and escape that discomfort many times with distraction. So when a project is difficult, when sales calls aren't going the way I want them to, when I've got a big board meeting I have to prepare for, and I'm scared and I'm anxious, that's a good time to go check the news and worry about somebody's problem, 5,000 miles away, so I don't have to think about my own problems, right?
Right.
That's when I start doing all this other junk that's not, I start attending stupid meetings I didn't need to go to. I start answering emails that I didn't need to be a part of. I start doing all this stuff because I don't want to deal with the real problem, which is just a feeling. That's all it is. It's just a feeling. And so to me, that was incredibly liberating. Like, I didn't understand how the human mind doesn't operate on carrots and sticks. This is a false dichotomy. We've all heard about this, right? Carrots and sticks. It turns out that the only thing that motivates the mind, the only thing, everything you do is about one thing. It's about the desire to escape discomfort. Everything you do, everything your clients do, your employees do, your kids do, is about the desire to escape discomfort. Even feeling good, right? Even wanting, craving, desiring, lusting to feel good is also uncomfortable. And so the way the brain gets us to act is by spurring this discomfort that then makes us do something about that discomfort. So once you understand that that discomfort is normal, it's natural, and it's something you can reinterpret. So to answer your question, sorry for a long-winded response, a lot of it comes down to reimagining the trigger. Now, I give over a dozen different techniques. This just happens to be one of them. I had to learn very painfully how to deal with this discomfort. So you talked about fear and I talked about anxiety, and we now know how that causes us to get distracted.
Hey guys, if you're getting value from this, make sure to subscribe so you won't miss future conversations like this one. And if you know another entrepreneur who could use these insights, share this episode with him. How do we identify and manage internal triggers?
Right. So I'll tell you exactly how I did it. So I've been a professional speaker for well over decades now, and I have struggled with stage fright for years and years. I still feel stage fright.
Wow.
And so that is not the kind of thing you want for a public speaker, right? And so what I would do when I was about to go on stage, I would feel my heart palpitating. I would feel my armpits getting sweaty. I'd feel my throat getting all dry, and I'd start being very anxious. I'd start worrying about, what's going to happen. I'm going to fub my lines. I'm going to mess up. I'm going to make a fool of myself. And if I was a real professional speaker, I wouldn't be feeling this. Maybe I'm no good at this. Maybe I should quit. And I started ruminating about all these uncomfortable sensations. I started becoming very, very anxious. And to be totally honest with you, Idol, I still get the same exact emotions, the same exact physiological responses. I can feel my heart beating right now. So what changed? How did I become aware, as you asked, and what did I do about those sensations? So what I did, and this is one of over a dozen different techniques, I reimagined the trigger. So before, I would interpret that emotional response. Okay, most people don't understand there's a difference between emotions and feelings. Okay, people use those words interchangeably. There's a big difference. An emotion is something you don't control. It's a physiological reaction. So the heart beating, my armpits getting sweaty, I don't control that. What I control is the feeling. A feeling is a psychological interpretation of the physiological response. So I reinterpreted that emotion. So now when I feel the exact same thing, nothing has changed about what my body does. When I'm about to get up in front of a crowd of 1,000 people or even doing this podcast, I feel the exact same way physiologically. But now I change the story. I change the story so that when I feel those same emotional responses, when I feel my heart beating, when I feel my armpits getting sweaty, I don't tell myself a story that I'm somehow inferior and that this is bad. I tell myself, why would I expect to feel any other way? Who says I need to feel any other way? In fact, that's a great thing, because the truth of the matter is that blood pumping in my chest is sending oxygen to my brain so I can deliver my best possible talk. And so that's just one example of how we can turn around these uncomfortable emotional sensations so that when we're bored, who says you can't be bored? When we're stressed, who says we can't be stressed? When we're anxious, who says we can't be anxious? It's totally fine. Right? It's totally normal. It's about how we interpret those sensations. And as opposed to what I think our culture tells us, as soon as you feel any sort of discomfort, drink it away, take a pill, scroll something, go do something else, take your mind off of the problem. No, what I say is lean into the problem, learn to reinterpret the problem so that it serves you rather than hurts you. Because at the end of the day, it's just an interpretation. It's just in our heads.
So as soon as we feel those sensations, don't panic, accept that, and think of a way to reframe that That's going to help to calm me down. Am I right?
Right. That's part of it. So that's one step. So the idea, what I don't want people to do is to say, okay, well now I'm going to go, do something completely different. Because then we don't, what people do sometimes is, okay, in order to restore my harmony, I'm going to go stop working and go meditate. Well,
Mm,
then we didn't really accomplish the goal. Because if now you're
right.
meditating, as opposed to doing your work, when you said you were going to do your work, that's a distraction, right? So the goal is to help you do whatever it is you say you're going to do. Okay. So part of these techniques that I talk about in mastering the internal triggers, one of them is about learning how to play anything. And this is a technique that I got from Ian Bogost, a professor at Georgia Tech. And he talks about how when we learn to play something, we've kind of misinterpreted that. When people think about learn how to play something, they think that you have to add fun to it. It has to be more enjoyable. Let's do the Mary Poppins technique of a spoonful of sugar, right? Let's gamify things. So now that they're enjoyable. And he says, no. That play doesn't have to be fun. What? That doesn't make any sense. Play doesn't have to be fun. It's exactly right. That the idea of the techniques that I'm giving people, these are all techniques that we can use to get through the time box, to get through that period of time when we said we were going to work on a task without distraction long enough to say, yep, I did what I said I was going to do. Okay, that's a big mental shift for people because people are so used to what I call the tyranny of the to-do list. We have been taught that productivity is about checking box after box after box, these cute little boxes. That's what we're supposed to check off. That is ridiculous because I know firsthand experience. You know what I used to do with those to-do lists? I would finish a task and then I would say, oh, you know what? I forgot to put that on my to-do list. And then I'd go back and write it so that I can check it off. It's so stupid,
For the dopamine
right?
rush.
Right. And we know what people do when it comes to those to-do lists. They do the easy stuff. They do the urgent stuff, and they don't do the important hard work. So the right metric of success, and this is super, super important, the right metric of success is not how many cute little boxes you checked off. The right metric of success is, did I do what I said I was going to do for as long as I said I would without distraction? That's it. It's not, you didn't hear me say, did I finish?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Right?
mm-hmm.
I didn't say, did I finish the task? I said, did I do what I said I was going to do for as long as I said I would without distraction? Because then, and this is why my techniques beat to-do lists by far. They eat them for breakfast. Because a person who uses a to-do list, they work on something for 5 minutes, and then, oh, let me just check that quick email, and oh, you know what, I really like a cup of coffee, and oh, there's Edo by the water cooler. Hey, what's going on? Oh, wait, what was I working on again? They have no clue. Right? They've forgotten. They got totally distracted. Whereas someone who's indistractable, who uses this time boxing technique, which is step number 2, they sit down, they say, I'm going to work on this task for 30 minutes. That's it. I'm not going to do anything else. And then I'm going to look at how much I did in those 30 minutes. And now I can start predicting what my output should look like. And so that's just the tip of the iceberg in terms of how powerful these techniques can be and why we really have to reshape people's minds around how productivity actually works in the real world.
So the way to distinguish between a healthy break and a distraction disguised as a quick recharge is, did I plan that or did I not plan that, right?
Bingo. Exactly right. Because we tend to vilify the things that are fun. Oh, don't play Candy Crush. Don't go on social media. Don't check YouTube. Don't do any of those things. That's clearly a frivolous distraction. No, not necessarily. There's nothing that you can't do. If you want, you're an adult. You can do whatever the
As long
frick
as
you
I
want.
pre-decided to do that.
Bingo. You want to paint. You want to stare at the ceiling. You want to pray. You want to meditate. Whatever it is you want. Play video games. Awesome. Do it. But decide in advance according to your schedule and your values, not someone else's.
All right, we now understand what it means to become indistractable, but what does it look like in real life? Is there like an objective, indistractable entrepreneur's work week structure?
Yeah, so you have to wake up at 3 a.m., you have to do an ice bath, and then you have to make sure that you do your ayahuasca, and then you have
Let
to...
me write it down.
So the idea here is to live without regret. That's what I'm trying to do with my life. I want that I look back on every day and I say, you know what? I lived that day the way I wanted to. And then if I can do that day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, I'll have a lifetime where I said, you know what? I did what I wanted to. Right? Whatever was in my control, namely my time, my attention, I spent it the way I wanted to. I can't control everything in the world, but I definitely can control my time and my attention. Those are the inputs to get the output I want. The rest is up to the world. I can't control that stuff. But if you don't control your time and attention, if you let those be controlled by others, I promise you, you will live a life of regret. You will look back and say, why didn't I do this, that, and the other? Because I was watching TV, I was playing YouTube or whatever. That's what I want to prevent. So if you want to do those things, fantastic. So the idea here is that I give people these 3 life domains, because to just say, oh, plan your day the way you want to live your life, it's hard for people. It's too amorphous. So I give people these 3 life domains to help them on their way. So the idea here is you take out a calendar. You can use Google Calendar. You can use a paper calendar. I don't really care. Any calendar will do. And look at the week ahead. And what I want you to do is to put time in your calendar for these 3 life domains. The first life domain is you. If you can't take care of yourself, you can't take care of other people, you can't make the world a better place. So the first place to start when you look at that calendar is you ask yourself to express your values. What are values? Values are attributes of the person you want to become. I'll say it again. Values are attributes of the person you want to become. So when you look at your calendar, you ask yourself, how would the person I want to become spend time taking care of themselves? Okay, so does that include prayer? Does that include meditation? Does that include reading a book? Does that include taking a walk? Does that include physical fitness? Does that include a bedtime? Right? We know this stuff is important, but we just do it when we think we'll do it. And of course, we don't do it. So we don't do it because we're not putting it in our calendar. So I now have, my daughter, I used to yell at her and say, oh, you have to go to bed. It's your bedtime. And then one day she looked at me and she said, Daddy, do you have a bedtime? And she was absolutely right. I know how important sleep is. And yet I'd be, pecking away on my phone in the middle of the night because I hadn't set a bedtime. Today I have a bedtime. And I prioritize, first and foremost, I have to take care of myself. So put that time in your calendar. Anything that you want to do, which, by the way, if the person you want to become plays video games, awesome. Do it. But put it in your schedule. So that's you. Okay. The next life domain is your relationships. Far too many people, they let their relationships disappear. They let them starve to death. Whatever time is left over, that's what we give the most important people in our lives. And I used to do this to my wife, and it was terrible. I neglected her because, I would give her whatever scraps of time were left after everything else had been done. And that's awful, right? Like, she's the second most important person in my life after taking care of myself. So now we have that time in the calendar. Every Friday evening, we have a dinner date. Every Sunday morning, we have a walking date. It's in the calendar that we have that time together. Okay, no exceptions. We always want that time together, because if we don't, we drift apart. With my daughter, I have time, right? Every Thursday evening, that's when we have our time. With my friends, I have that time planned in advance. With my other family members, we had that time planned for. And I think part of the reason we have this loneliness epidemic throughout the industrialized world is that people stop putting time in their calendars for people in their community, for the people who really matter in their lives. As society became more secular, we stopped going to church and synagogue and civic groups. We have to bring that regularly scheduled time back. So that's your relationship domain. So as now your calendar is filling up more and more, right? Now the last life domain is called your work domain, which is where most people start this practice. But in fact, I think it's the last life domain, because we have to take care of those concentric circles first. Now, work can be divided into 2 kinds of work. We have what we call reactive work, and then we have what's called reflective work. Reactive work, you'll be very familiar with, right? This is reacting to messages, reacting to notifications, reacting to taps on the shoulder from a colleague. That's all reactive work. And most people's day is spent doing reactive work. Now, the problem is people become habituated to reactive work. Why? Because reactive work does not require you to ask what to do. And remember, our brains are cognitive misers. Our brains are constantly trying to save as much energy as possible. They don't want to think. So when I don't know what my priorities are, right? Remember, that's the number one job of a manager, is to prioritize. When I don't really know and I don't want to think about it, I'll just check email. Email will tell me what my priorities are, right? If I don't know exactly what's supposed to, I'll go to that meeting. I'll check a Slack channel. And that's all reactive work. And that is death to your productivity and creativity. Because if you don't make time in your schedule for reflective work, the other half of our work life domain, reflective work is the kind of work that can only be done without distraction. Planning, strategizing, thinking, all that stuff requires reflection on your own without distraction. And so that time must be made for as well in your calendar. If you don't have at least some time in your schedule for reflective work, I promise you're going to run real fast in the wrong direction. So you have to plan that time as well. Now, what will happen in this exercise? Guarantee it, you will not have enough time for everything. 100% guarantee. You will say, I want this, I want that, I want that. And they're just, you need 28 hours in the day, but they're only 24. So now I'm forcing you, as opposed to a to-do list, which you know my opinion on to-do lists. To-do list, you put anything you want, right? Every dream, every aspiration. So we get this mile-long to-do list, and then we feel guilty every day that we haven't done what we said we're going to do, right? So to-do lists convince you you're terrible at time management because day after day, you didn't do those things. Whereas a time box calendar, you only spend time doing what you said you were going to do. So you're forced to make some trade-offs. If I spend a little bit more time in the office, that means a little less time with my kids. A little less time with my kids means more time in the gym, etc. You have to make those trade-offs so that at the end of the day, you have this time box calendar of here is how I want to spend my time on earth today. And that's all we have. That's all we have in life is just that one day at a time. And so that time boxing practice is how we guarantee we live a life full of joy as opposed to regret.
Neil, before we talk about productivity or time management strategy, many people jump from one productivity system to another. Why do they fail to stick with just one?
Look, everything worth having in life is on the other side of pain. All right. You want a great relationship. I don't know what your marital status is, but I know I've been married now for 24 years, and it's hard freaking work. You
Yeah,
don't
me
get
too.
yeah,
Same time.
it's hard. Oh yeah, 24 years as well. So
Yeah.
it takes work. It's not always easy. You want to get in shape. Do you just say, "Oh, I want, a six pack"? No, it takes diligent effort every single day. You got to eat right. You got to exercise. You want to build a business. It doesn't just happen. You don't get it because you want it. The universe doesn't care what you want. You have to work at it. You have to put in effort. So that effort, requires hard work. And you know what? The vast majority of people, they're going to listen to this podcast. They're going to do jack all about it. They're going to say, that's too hard. That won't work. It's not for me. He doesn't understand my situation. I have ADHD. I have this. And they won't do it. And you know what? That's
Not
fine.
my viewers. Every single one of my viewers are going to do this exact thing.
Amen.
Amen.
But for those, I don't care about the people who don't try it. I care about the people who want to improve their lives, who want to live without regret. And for those people, we need to stop thinking that things are going to be easy. Right? They're not. If this was easy, everybody would do it. But it's exactly the fact that we have the people who are successful in life and the people who are not so successful in life, who look back and regret on their lives. And the successful people are the ones who do the hard things that are required to be successful. And when I say successful, I'm not talking about monetary success. That's the last of my concerns. I'm talking about emotional success. I'm talking about looking back on your life and feeling good about the kind of life you lived. That requires some effort. That requires a practice. That requires learning new skills. And frankly, most people aren't willing to do the hard work.
Hey guys, I know a lot of business owners struggle with distractions. What's the biggest thing that keeps you from staying focused? Drop a comment below and let's swap notes. So let's talk about what is exactly time boxing and why is it more affecting than the traditional to-do list? I mean, we talked about the to-do list. Let's just stick with time boxing.
Sure. Yeah, so time boxing is simply deciding in advance what you will do and when you're going to do it. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's not about finishing the task. That's not what's important. It's about deciding in advance what you will work on. So if it's time boxing being with your kids, if it's time boxing reading the news or watching TV, that's all fine. Now, there are many reasons why it's way better than a to-do list. We talked about some of them. The most important reason is that you get a feedback loop with a time box calendar that you never get with a to-do list. So because a to-do list, you have no idea how long things take you. And so this is what's called the planning fallacy. We know that most people, there's been studies on this, most people will take 3 times longer to finish a task than they assume they will, right? So you think, I'm going to work on that presentation. It's going to take me about an hour. Nope, it's going to statistically take you 3 hours. And the reason people are so bad at predicting their output is that they've had no practice looking at the input. Right? As knowledge workers, as entrepreneurs, as managers, what is our input and output? We know what our output is. We have our OKRs. We have all our objectives. We know what we know what we're on the hook to do. That's the output, right? But what's the input? The input is just 2 things. It's our time and our attention. But somehow magically, we think we're going to get all this output without the input. And so it's, if you're a baker and you need to, make bread every day, you make sure you have the input, you have the ingredients, you have the flour, you have the sugar, you have the butter, you have all the ingredients to make your cakes, right? But we as entrepreneurs, we also need to decide in advance what will be the input to get the output. And so that's what time boxing is all about. It's about deciding in advance how you're going to spend that time so that you can say, okay, I worked on that presentation, I prepared for the board meeting, I made my sales calls, and I did it for this block of time, 30 minutes, an hour, doesn't matter. And how much did I get done? Therefore, I will know, okay, let's say I worked on my presentation and I worked on it for 30 minutes and I finished 3 slides of a 30-slide presentation. Well, perfect. Well, now I know I need 9 more time boxes to finish the entire presentation. And so that's one of the reasons that time boxing eats to-do lists for breakfast.
Nir, with your permission, I'd like to bring up some of the most frequent issues and questions that people wrote in the comments of your previous interviews. Does it sound good?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, great. So there's one question that keeps coming up in the comments, and I think it's going to surprise even you. I won't reveal it just yet. If you stay until the end, you'll get an answer that could completely change the way you run your business. So let's go to the first question. People see technology as addictive by design and ask, do we even stand a chance controlling our attention? I know you have a totally different take on this. Can you please share it?
It's in our heads. It's absolutely in our heads. Look, I know all the things that these companies do to get you hooked. I wrote the book Hooked. I know all their tricks.
Read it.
They're good. They're not that good. Right? This is, what are we talking about here? We're talking Candy Crush, what, TikTok? Like, really? Really? We're going to complain that these products are addicting us. They're hijacking our brains. Look, folks, if you are looking for a distraction, of course you will find it. But you only are powerless if you think you are. This is the thing. When people tell themselves, there's nothing I can do, the technology, it's addicting everyone, it's hijacking our brains. Hijacking our brains? Hijacking is what those bastards did to us on 9/11. It's not Candy Crush. It's not email. Give me a frickin' break here. It's good. It's very engaging. Of course it's designed to be engaging, but it's nothing that you can't overcome. The thing is, when people just say this, oh my God, we're powerless, well, then they act like they're powerless. But if I've got the answer for you right here, it's in this little book. It'll take you about an hour and a half. And I promise you, if you do these 4 strategies, master internal triggers, make time for traction, hack back external triggers, prevent distraction with packs, come back to me and tell me if you still don't have control. I promise you, you will get control.
Let's talk for a second about the 10% of external distractions. People want to know, what are your most updated go-to apps and tools to manage distractions like email, social media nowadays?
So I use most of the standard stuff. I use Gmail. I use Superhuman for email. And I don't think it's particularly fantastic for fighting distraction. It's just basically an email server. I think one app that actually has helped me quite a bit is an app called Pocket. And there's a few things that do something similar to Pocket. And this is really great because I love to read articles, right? That's the medium that speaks to me. I'm not really into videos and TikTok. I really like long form articles that make an interesting point. But the problem was that I would read an article in The Atlantic or somewhere online, and then I'd scroll down and say, oh, there's another interesting article, another interesting article, another interesting article. And I'd go down this vortex. And then, 30, 45 minutes later, that's not what I wanted to be doing. So now I have this rule that whenever I see an article online that I want to read, I never read it on my desktop. I never, ever read on my desktop. I have a little Chrome extension from this app called Pocket. I push the button, and the text from that article gets sent to my phone on this app where I can listen to the article. I have the article read to me. And my rule is that I can only listen to the articles while I'm doing something for my health. So if I'm taking a walk, if I'm in the gym, if I'm doing something for my health, that's my reward. So it's called temptation bundling is what this is called. So that's been a really, really wonderful app that I recommend to a lot of folks.
And with emails and messaging, it's just scheduling time to go over them. Nothing else.
Exactly. And now there's a whole, I don't know if we have enough time for it, but there's a chapter in the book on exactly how to hack back email. Anybody can do it. The technique I described should save the average person about 50% of the time they spend on email.
Yeah, one of the questions that repeats itself all the time is, how do you balance structured time with the need for flexibility in a business that constantly faces unexpected challenges?
Great question. So I actually was going to answer one way, and then the one word that you said maybe change my answer, or at least give 2 potential answers. And you said the word feeling, right? You said, how do you resist feeling bad about things changing? So that's a really important word you said, because it turns out, remember we talked about the difference between emotions and feelings are
Yeah. Yeah.
interpretations, psychological
Mhm.
interpretations of those physiological sensations. So this turns out to be the biggest problem, which again, that's why it's step one. It turns out that for most entrepreneurs, and look, I've started 3 companies. I've been there. I know what it feels like. And the vast majority of the time, it's a subjective, perceptive reality, not an
Hmm.
objective fact. It's my fear that other people might think I'm not responding in time. It's my fear that my clients might get mad at me. It's my fear that I'm not doing a good enough job. It's not reality. It's just my perception. And when I work with people, and I've worked with many clients, and when we actually ground it in based on what's real versus what's imagined, 99% of the time, it's just imagined. It's just a feeling. It's just a sensation. And so learning to deal with that fear is super, super important. That people think, oh, I can't possibly time box my day because what if somebody needs me? But in actuality, they don't, at least not all day. So the solution is, funny enough, you can plan to be available, right?
Hmm.
You can plan that time to say, you know what? Uh, 7 out of 8 hours of my day, my office is open. I'm here to help. I'm doing nothing but reactive work for 7 hours of the day. But you better put in at least some time that other hour of the day for reflective work. This is the problem. People think I need to be on call all day long, and they have no time to do the actual work, especially if you're an entrepreneur. If you are all day reactive, you're not thinking, you're not strategizing, you're not planning, you're just reacting all day. So you can absolutely put that time in your day to be spontaneous. You can plan spontaneity. It sounds like an oxymoron, but you can absolutely say, hey, I have my office hours from this time to this time. My door's open, and I'm going to sit here, and anybody who needs to talk to me, come on in. I'm ready. Okay? But if you don't plan other time in your day to say, look, this is the time when I need to focus, when I need to work, when I can't be distracted because I'm doing creative work or strategic work, that's the much bigger mistake. So people think, oh, just in case I might get interrupted, well, then I won't plan any time to work with that distraction. And that's a huge, huge mistake. And you can also, by the way, one more technique, you can also plan in buffer time. There's nothing wrong with saying in my calendar, look, let's say Richard Branson was going to meet with you, okay, or Elon Musk was going to meet with you, and you have to drive 30 minutes across town, and sometimes there's traffic, okay? So what would you do? Would you show up half an hour late and say, oh, I'm sorry, Elon, I'm sorry, Mr. Branson, there was traffic? No, you would leave early, right? But somehow when it comes to appointments with ourselves, we're late all the time. Things get in the way. Somehow we are less important than these other people, right? These famous people who we drop everything for.
Because we want to go, 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 go. We want to complete tasks. We want to be there.
Well, that's where removing that constraint. I think the reason that happens is because people think the goal is to finish.
Right.
And that's a huge misconception. It's not about finishing. It's saying I'm going to work on just one thing and nothing else so that I can see what I am capable of accomplishing, so I can learn what is realistic. The worst thing is people think, we talked about that planning fallacy. It's 3 times longer. To give themselves 1 hour and they say, oh my God, in the last 15 minutes, oh, I didn't finish anything. And now they're all stressed out. And so what do they do when they're stressed out? That's those internal triggers. Well, now let me just check email, right? Because it's impossible anyway. And that's how they spend their lives all day long. And they accomplish very, very little.
Okay, so we've covered how business owners can apply these principles in their own lives. But what if the biggest bottleneck in the business isn't you, but your team? In just a moment, we'll break down how to create a traction-based work culture without micromanagement. But first, let's clear off some mental barriers. Many founders, including myself, struggle to let go of control because their business is their life's mission. How do you shift from an operator mindset to a true CEO mindset when you feel like the business is your baby?
So this is a little bit outside my area of expertise. So it's not what I write about, but I'll tell you just from personal experience starting 3 businesses. I think if you can't let someone run with an initiative or run with their job, frankly, if you can't let someone do their job, either you're the problem because you can't let go, or they're the problem because they can't do it. Simple as that.
All right, thank you for answering that. Okay, here's another frequently asked question. I find myself stuck making too many small decisions instead of focusing on the big ones. What's a simple system to offload unnecessary choices?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is where thinking about this in advance is so important. So this is the thing. When people say, if someone could ask that question, they know what are the big questions they're not focused on. And I guarantee you the problem is that they haven't made time to think. I mean, think about it, right? If you're a business owner, the most important thing you can do is think. Right? Like nobody's hiring you. You're not in business to do the work. That's what your employees are doing. Your job is to prioritize what work needs to get done and then clear things out of the way of your employees so that they can do their job. And so if you're not planning that time in advance and protecting it, keeping it sacred to think, to plan, to strategize, you're never going to get ahead. You're going to be in this hamster wheel constantly running around like crazy and actually moving very few things forward.
This is exactly why I put together the Burnout Free Business Guide, a free resource to help business owners scale without burning out. So if you want a clear, actionable framework to work smarter while avoiding exhaustion, you can grab it here for free. It's linked in the description and in the first comment below.
By the way, one of the best tricks to doing this that I think far too people utilize is this amazing technology that we have here. This paper, and well, look, there's another technology that's amazing. A pen.
Wow.
It's incredible. People will pay me. I shouldn't tell you this. People will pay me thousands of dollars per hour to help them do the things that they themselves could do if they just sat down, blocked out the time, shut themselves in a room and let themselves think with a pen and paper, just thinking through their issues.
Why do we know that we should do it, but we don't?
Yeah, because we're constantly looking for escape from discomfort. So I know that thinking through difficult issues is going to be painful. It's going to be hard. It's going to be uncomfortable. There are going to be questions that I don't know the answer to. Right? It's like no student I've ever met in school, I certainly, was eager to take a test. Right? Oh, it's time for your algebra test. Nobody's like, yay, I can't wait. Because, tests are meant to see what we are capable of. And that's stressful. It's painful, right? And so when every day in business, when you have these big questions, you feel like you're being tested. And that can be for a lot of people very stressful and painful. So we avoid it. And what does the brain do when it's forced to deal with pain? First, it looks for an escape. It looks for a way out. And so we have to shift our mindset around that we have to see this not as happening to us, but happening for us. As an entrepreneur, when you're being tested, this is when we can rise to the occasion. This is where we can be great at what we do because we have the opportunity to ace that test. But what most people are doing is they're skipping school, right? They're playing hooky. They're doing the stuff that's keeping them occupied. And meanwhile, there's this stress on their shoulders of these big questions they need to answer, and they're not answering them because they won't bite the bullet, sit down, and think for themselves. And so they hire consultants, and they read books, and they call meetings. We call meetings so we can talk it out with our teams. When really what you have to do is do your homework, right? Sit down and ask yourself these fundamental questions around what needs to happen next, right? What's the strategy? What's the big picture here? And what problems are you struggling with? And if you prompt yourself, here's the trick I want to share with you. That in fact, we know, studies have found this, that talking to yourself in the third person, like literally asking yourself that you don't exist, right? That you have been asked by a friend to help them with the exact same problem that you have. Have you ever noticed this, by the way? It's amazing how when a friend comes to you with a problem, you're a goddamn genius. You can tell them all the answers to their problems, right? And somehow they're like, wow, I never saw it that way. I never thought of it that way. And you're like, well, I'm clearly brilliant because look, I solved all your problems for you. But then when it comes to our own problems, we are completely blind, right? We can't identify what's in our way, right? It's an endemic part of the human condition. So the trick around that is to say, these aren't my problems. This is somebody else's problems. Now, if that person came to me with this exact scenario, what would I tell them? And that trick is amazing. It sounds silly, but it's incredibly effective.
I've experienced that so many times. I'm thinking when I'm giving advice, I'm channeling something beyond myself,
Right.
just so I could help. The universe is helping me to help others, but when it comes to me, I have to do all the hard work. No one's channeling anything to me. But so now you gave me a hack, so how I can do that for myself. Amazing. I'm gonna try it for sure. So you said the opposite of distraction isn't focus, it's traction. How do we create a traction-oriented team culture?
Okay, so in my book, there is a chapter on how to build an indistractable workplace. And there are three conditions for an indistractable workplace. And so I figured these out by actually going to companies who became indistractable or were already indistractable. And so I profile a few companies on how they did this. And the pattern that emerged was, number one, that employees have what's called psychological safety. Psychological safety is the ability to talk about your problems within the company, within the organization, without fear of retribution. So the interesting thing is that what people think is a technology problem, it's, we're always connected to our devices and we have too many meetings over Zoom and they blame the technology, is not actually a technology problem. It's a communication problem. Because look, if you can't raise your hand and say, hey, boss, I can't do my best work when you're constantly interrupting me every 30 seconds. I can't concentrate. I can't do my best work. If you can't talk about that problem, that is the problem. And it's amazing how many people can't talk about the problem of distraction at work because they think, my boss is going to think I'm lazy. I'm not a team player. They're going to think less of me, where that is the problem. That means you don't have psychological safety. And I promise you, if you can't talk about the problem of distraction at work, I guarantee there's all kinds of other skeletons in the closet too you can't talk about. So giving employees psychological safety, that's the first step. The second step is having a forum to talk about this problem. So a place where people can get together and solve this problem just like we solve every other business challenge. So if we have this problem around distraction, if we find, hey, we're not able to really do our best work because we're constantly checking email, meetings, whatever, and we don't have time for actual thinking, then we need a forum. We need a place to talk about it, whether it's meetings, whether it's work groups, whether it's whatever it is, that we can get together and really work together on that challenge. And it turns out that companies that put a concerted effort to talking about it, they can solve it just like any other business challenge.
But Neil, how is that not just another meeting? That's a distraction in itself.
Well, there's a way to organize meetings, and we'll get to that actually in a minute on how to organize good meetings. We can talk about that. But let me just finish the third point on how to build an indistractable workplace. The third point, the most important point, is that indistractable workplaces are led by people who are indistractable themselves. And this is advice I give to parents as much as I give to business leaders. You can't tell your employees that they need to, focus on their sales calls or they need to do their work when you're meanwhile checking your device. Just like as a parent, you can't tell your kid to stop playing Fortnite and meanwhile you're checking email all day. You have to walk the walk. And so that's very important, that indistractable companies are led by indistractable leaders. So those three things, psychological safety, a place to talk about the problem, and finally led by indistractable people. And then we can talk about how to have great meetings.
What's a simple framework for ensuring a team prioritizes real impact, not just checking off tasks?
That is the only job of a manager, is to prioritize. And so the team can provide. So this is actually a perfect segue to talk about what's the difference between most meetings and good meetings. Most people don't understand what is a good meeting. Like, what is the point? Why do we even have meetings? What are we meetings for? Are meetings for socializing? Nope. That's a social engagement. Are they for brainstorming? Nope. People make this mistake all the time. Meetings are not for brainstorming. You know why? Because the optimal number of people for a brainstorming session is 2 or less. Okay, studies have found that optimal number of people in a brainstorming session is 2 or less. Why? Because if you get any more than 2 people together, the loudest, the highest paid, the most dominant person is going to, suck all the oxygen out of the room. They're going to dominate the conversation. And so studies have found the optimal number of people for a brainstorming session is 2 or fewer people, okay? The point of a meeting, not for socializing, not for brainstorming, the point of a meeting is for one thing and one thing only, and that is to gain consensus. That's it. The point of a meeting is to gain consensus. So you asked, well, how do you organize a meeting about becoming indistractable, about this problem of distraction? Isn't that just another meeting? Well, here's what it would look like. A stakeholder is identified. Okay, so a manager is assigned this responsibility. Your job is to fix this problem. Your job is to make a decision to, move whatever metric we want to move. That stakeholder then asks team members to contribute whatever they are looking for, right? So if as that manager is looking for how to fix this problem, what should be prioritized, they're going to ask team members, hey, I would love your thoughts about XYZ. Please spend no more than 30 minutes in a time box, and please think about this question, and please give me your input. That can be done asynchronously. That should not be done in a meeting. Then that person, whoever that stakeholder, spends some time, does their homework, they think about the problem, and they come back with a recommendation that they want to gain consensus around. Now we circulate that. We have what's called a briefing document. I stole this from Amazon. We circulate this briefing document. We circulate an agenda for what we are going to gain consensus around. We meet the stakeholder who is assigned that project, disseminates their conclusions, and now we discuss to make sure that there wasn't something that person left out. And at the end of that meeting, we should gain consensus around this is what we are going to do next. Okay, so that format, the vast majority of companies do not do. In fact, 80% of meetings don't have any sort of agenda. What? That's something teenagers learn in high school, is that if you're going to have a student council meeting, you need to have a damn agenda. So if we can bring back those practices, we will have better meetings. We will have far fewer meetings of much higher quality.
Let's go back to time boxing for a second from a business owner's perspective. I didn't tell you that, but after reading your book, I made all my team read it. And then we took a day off to see how we can implement all that in the business. And when I introduced it to my employees, they struggle with the constant urgent, client requests, other team members' requests. So how do you fix that?
Yeah, you make time for it. Look, there are some jobs that are 100% reactive. If your job is on a call center, right? The phone rings, you pick it up, you answer the call. That's 100% reactive work time. Okay? That's what that job looks like. If you're a software engineer, your job is 100% reflective, right? The number one cause of bugs in software is interruptions. That's where mistakes are made. So that's almost 100% reflective work type of job. Most people have some kind of combination, right? Some reflective, some reactive time. So what you need to do is to build that in your calendar to say, look, from this time to this time, that is my time to think. Unless the building is on fire, I want to work without distraction because I can't do my best work unless I have time to think. Okay. But then other times in the day, that's my reactive work time. And so if you say, oh, but what if a client calls? What if somebody needs me? Well, let me ask you something. Let's say you're a heart surgeon. If somebody calls and says your kid has the sniffles at school, your kid has a fever in school, are they going to bust into that operating room and say, doctor, stop saving that man's life, your child has a cold? No, the contingency plan. There is a practice in place to say, look, if there's something important going on and this person is busy with something very important, somebody else will cover that task. Okay, it's not rocket science. It's not that difficult. And if you say, okay, but what if, I need to respond? Fantastic, no problem. You can say, I'm going to work on a task for 30 minutes. And then after that, I'm going to do 30 minutes of reactive work, right? I'm going to check my email for 30 minutes. I'm going to look at my WhatsApp for 30 minutes, whatever it's going to be. If you need to frequently check, that's fine. And so it's just about, and the very, very important point here is when you make a time box calendar, you don't frame it. You don't, put it in stone. No. It's a living document, right? The idea here is to make your calendar easier to follow. So part of the practice that I described in Indistractable is that every week your job is to sit down and look at the calendar from the week that just passed and ask yourself, how can I make this calendar easier to follow? Because all of us will fall off track from time to time. I still fall off track from time to time. It's part of the process. So when I find, oh my gosh, I got interrupted. Okay, I know why I got interrupted. It's either a planning problem, an external trigger, or an internal trigger. That's it. There's only 3 causes of every single distraction. So now I can look at that and I can say, okay, I was doing this and then I got distracted. Why did I get distracted? So how in the week that will come, how can I make that calendar easier to follow? So your job isn't to be a drill sergeant where everything has to be done exactly. No. Your job is to be a scientist. The job of a scientist.
Of course, I don't want to because I don't want to be micromanaging every one of my employees.
Absolutely. You
show me what you did
should.
And show me what you didn't do.
No. That's up to them. That's their job. It's a practice that should benefit them. They should get more done. But the idea is that week after week, you're assessing that calendar the week ahead and changing it to say, okay, well, this week I had this meeting, so I need to move this around. That's totally fine. You can change your calendar up to the day. But once midnight hits or whatever your time of day that you start your day, that's it. The calendar is locked and loaded, so you have to follow it. But you can change your calendar to the next day, the next week. You can change things around, no problem. It's not set in stone because you want to make it easier to follow over time. So if that might include buffer time and it might include different things, totally fine.
Like if I see a task is perpetually taking more time than I've scheduled, next time I'm going to just give it more time, not worry about it.
So that's the whole point of knowing that the goal is not to finish the task. So it's exactly what you were saying. So let's say I say, okay, I'm going to put in 30 minutes for my presentation. And now, oh my goodness, I didn't do 3 slides per hour. I did only 1 slide per hour. Well, now I know, hey, if that presentation is coming up, I have to budget more time. But most people don't do that. They just put on their calendar, or I'm sorry, they put on their to-do list. And then, a day before, maybe a few minutes before, they freak out because where did all the time go?
Mm-hmm. Or they freak out after when they didn't do the task in time.
Even worse.
If you could only do one thing from the book tomorrow, what should
Yeah.
it be?
It would be not a thing you do, but a thing you think. And the thing to
Mm-hmm.
think, if you were to encapsulate my work over the past decade, it's this. It's in this simple mantra. The antidote to impulsiveness is forethought. I'm going to say it again. The antidote to impulsiveness is forethought, because fundamentally, distraction is an impulse control issue. It's not that you have a moral failing. You're not a bad person. You don't have anything broken about you. It's simply that you haven't learned this skill of impulse control. But if we plan ahead, right? The problem is we leave it to the last minute. If you're on a diet and the chocolate cake is on the way to your mouth, you're going to eat it. If you're trying to quit smoking, but the cigarette's in your hand, you're going to smoke it. If you sleep next to your cell phone every night, you're going to pick it up before you even say hello to your loved one who's sleeping right next to you, because it's too late. You've lost. You waited to the last minute. But if you plan ahead, there is no distraction you can't overcome. So if you take steps today, you can overcome every distraction tomorrow.
And you wrote a book about this, but what's one area that you still struggle with? Is there?
Oh, there's many, right? I write books to fix my problems, and thankfully I've got plenty of fodder for more content. I struggle with the same exact emotions that everybody else does. Some sadness, insecurity, fatigue, uncertainty, anxiety. I have these sensations, but I think over time, as I've matured emotionally and psychologically, I've learned that the feelings are the problem, not the emotion, not what is occurring within me. It's my interpretation of those sensations. And so I have the same exact struggles as everybody else, but I think I've become much better at interpreting those sensations.
Right. Your final question is a traditional question. What does reaching the tipping point of success mean to you? Is it becoming a distraction-free person, helping a billion people become indistractable, or is it something else?
To me, it's really about living without regret. I think very few people have lived even one day in their life the way they wanted to live it. They live it because of external factors, what others want them to do, what the media wants them to do, what politicians want them to do, what everybody else wants them to do. The joy, I mean, I get goosebumps just talking about it, of saying, this is what I want to do with my day. I want to be with my family this much. I want to be by myself this much. I want to do work that I love this much. Having the kind of day where you say, this is how I want to spend my day, and actually doing it. I'm not talking about some Shangri-La nirvana. Even if it's working an honest living, maybe it's a job that's a hard job, but you did the job so you could raise your family, so that you could live your values, and you did it because that's what you said you were going to do. That's the peak. That's the pinnacle.
Amazing. Nir, this has been so incredible. Thank you so much for your time, for your groundbreaking ideas and work. How can we get in touch with you? And what can we expect next from Nir Eyal? Is there a book? Is
I
there a new
appreciate it.
book cooking?
I do have a new book cooking.
All right.
It'll probably be out next year, hopefully, and working on it now, about halfway through. And my
Can you tell
website,
me,
if anybody,
can you share what's it about?
sure, it's about beliefs. It's about how do we leverage our belief systems to reshape our world. So it's kind of a continuation on this theme, but a different angle.
I can't wait. How can we get
Thank
in
you.
touch with you?
Yeah, so my website is Nir and Far. Nir spelled like my first name, Nir and Far.com. And the book again is Indistractable: How to Control Your Attention and Choose Your Life.
And of course, so active on LinkedIn, and you share so much wisdom there. I'm enjoying
Thank you.
every post. I'm reading every post. I'm trying to react to every post. So thank you so much for doing that. Nia, what can I say? This has been amazing. Thank you so
My
much for
pleasure.
this. It's going to help so
Anytime.
many people.
Thank you so much, Ido. I appreciate you having me.